Hi there, it's Sam here from All the Right Gears. We're here to help the Hamilton Police with their bikes, their sizing, their positioning, and how to use them properly. We're first going to talk about sizing. There's different officers, different heights, different leg lengths, your inseams. Try to find the bike that fits you. In other words, when you're grabbing a bike, as in my case, I'm 6 foot tall. I have an inseam of 34 inches. When you want to get on a bike like this, the bike you should have at least 1 inch clearance. Feet flat on the floor, shoulder width apart. If you lift up the bike from the handlebar or the seat post, you should be able to raise the bike 1 inch, 2 inches. That's good sizing. When you're sitting on the bike, you should be on your tippy toes for proper leg length. When you're pedaling, as your stroke comes down, you want to be efficient and comfortable. If your saddle is too low or too high, if you have a saddle this high and you cannot touch the ground, well, you're going to be, as in this case, my toes aren't even touching. When you're pedaling, your pelvic is gonna rock because you're sitting way too high. So you must put the seat down in a position where you can actually sit on the bike like this, hang on to the handlebars, and touch comfortably with your toes. Now, when you pedal, you're gonna have that natural bend in the knee. We're usually looking for 30 degrees. Okay? You don't want to sit too high, you don't want to sit too low. In this case, if you're sitting too low, you're not going to get any power out of your stride. The next thing I want to talk about is the saddle positioning here. And we always install the saddles to be in the center. You shouldn't really play with these because they're positioned already for that size of the bike. So if you get a bike that's too big and you think that you can just, shove the saddle forward like that, that's wrong. Okay, this is totally wrong. You will do a lot of damage to the seat rails and to the seat post. Because the bike is big for you now, you want to reach the handlebars, so you push the seat forward. No, that's wrong. You got the wrong bike. You need to go to the next size down, frame size, I'm saying. So 19 is good for 6 foot, 17 is good for 5'8", 5'9", depending on how long your legs are. So in this position now, we want to bring this saddle back, and even all the way back is no good because you can actually bend these rails. With the weight of your body here, your sit bones, you can actually bend these rails, and it has happened very often. The rails must stay in the middle. The seat has to be level. Okay, in this position you can see it's raised a bit. So you put her in the center, and as you tighten it down, you want this seat to be level with the ground. You never want a seat to be tipping forward. That puts too much strain on your elbows and your shoulders and your neck as you're leaning forward. If the seat tip is up, that puts a lot of strain on your lower back. So that's one of the things that we see happening with those bikes. The front here, the stem, the way it's set up is that you really can't touch it much. You can't raise it. You can lower it, but the Hamilton Police requested to have the stems higher so you're a little bit more comfortable. That's fine. So that's the proper fit for the first part here. So that's very important. Try not to touch the saddle. Leave it in the middle of the rail and get yourself the proper frame. Okay, so when you're straddling that frame, please make sure you have a little bit of room between your body and that bike. You should be able to raise that bike at least 1 inch or 2. Next is mounting the bike properly. In a lot of cases, the officers will put one leg on the bike and straddle it like this and bring their leg over. Well, that's really not that good for the bike. The position like this of the leg, putting all the weight down, and as you do that, it really stresses the frame and the crank, and you can actually see the flex when you're doing that. And I'm only 180 pounds, so when you're mounting it, it's actually wrong to mount this way. what you want to do is mount it this way. That's the proper way. And when you're taking off, you should have it in an easier gear, not in a really, really big gear. In other words, it shouldn't be heavy, like hard to push. Start off in easy gears and then gradually work up to your easier gears. It'll be easier on the drivetrain for sure. We've noticed a lot of chain breaks this year, and that's probably the cause. Starting off in such a big gear and torquing down too much. So by starting off in a little gear, you'll get off quicker, and then eventually you'll have to switch. So back to the mounting of the bike. Have it in a very easy gear when you start off, and then eventually gear down as you go along with your terrain. Another thing that's hard to do is switching when you're on an incline, going up a hill. The bike doesn't like to be switched to a lighter gear, an easier gear, when you're in a big gear and you're under load, meaning there's a lot of pressure on the pedals and you're trying to switch. If you're going to be on a hill and you're going to switch, we advise you to keep the pedals turning, but with light pressure on the pedals as you switch. So try to switch that gear without too much load on the pedal, but keeping the cranks turning at all times. It is possible to do. Also, riding over bumps, train tracks, potholes takes a toll on the wheels. Try not to stay seated when you're doing that. If you see a big hole, crack, like I said, train tracks, get off the saddle and use your knees for suspension, okay? It really, prolongs the life of the wheels. So, riding over tracks, use your legs, your knees to do that suspension for you. Not just sitting like that, because a lot of weight is on that bike when you're coming down, and it can bend rails, it can bend wheels. Yeah. Another thing we noticed is that each bike that we do for you, that we made for you, is the wheels are made for that bike. Okay, so they're trued for that bike, the angles are for that bike. We've noticed that some wheels were swapped out for other bikes. You really can't do that. On the new ones, you probably can get away with on the new ones, the Rockhopper 29ers. But the old ones, there's so many different wheels there that the discs just aren't compatible with some of the disc brakes. And the way they sit in the bike, it wasn't touching the frame properly. So there's been a few problems there with some wheels mismatched with other bikes. Okay, so going back to the handling of the bike, a lot of people don't know that right here by the gear selector is what we call a barrel adjuster. And these barrels will actually tighten cables and loosen cables. If you play around with that, your gears will be out. They will go out. Once we've adjusted it, it should stay there. These are called on-the-fly adjusters. So going in this way, clockwise, going clockwise, actually gives it slack. Turning it counterclockwise actually gives it more tension on the cable and makes it faster. In other words, it makes it click quicker. But sometimes it's not the right shift, and you'll be out of sync, and it'll sound wrong, and you'll be skipping gears. So you must watch these barrels and try not to touch them. Once we've adjusted them, leave them in their place. You guys have hydraulic brakes, so there's no barrels on there. The hydraulic brakes are working very well. Just have to keep oil and grease away from the discs and the pads. So this year, your bikes, you have 13 new bikes, the Rockhopper Comp 29ers. They come spec'd with what's called a Presta valve. The Presta valve is for high pressure. It's also called the French valve. It's just a thin valve. Right now it's closed, no air can come out. When you open it, you must turn it anti-clockwise. Now when I press down, air comes out. That means air can get in too. You need a special pump for this. If you don't have one, you can get away by using a little adapter, Presta adapter. They're brass. I've supplied every bike with two. Every bike has two of these. You put it on, you screw it on, and you can leave them on. Now it enables you to go at the back where the guys are working, or any gas station, put a chuck on there and fill it up with air. Please go with the tire pressure that is recommended on the tire on the side. There is usually, it'll say PSI, 80 PSI, 60 PSI. Please go by that.